Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Susanna DeBaca. I'm the president and CEO of BPC, or Business Publications Corporation, which is the parent of DSM Magazine, which is bringing you this event today. And I'm very pleased to welcome you all to our Lifting the Veil event. I am joined today by Andrew Allen, who is the CEO of YSS, and he is going to be co-moderating the event with me. Welcome, Andrew. How are you?
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. Great to be co-hosting, co-moderating with you, Susanna.
Excellent. I'm very glad you're here, and I'm going to introduce Andrew a little bit more later on in the program. But first, I want to just talk a little bit about why we're here today. I think many of you know that DSM Magazine has long been committed to shining a light on mental health. We've been doing that for years through our Lifting the Veil publication. But during the pandemic, we created a virtual event series around mental health that was so well received that we have continued it. This year, our theme for the entire series is the road to recovery. Through two virtual events and an annual publication, we've been exploring how the lives of Iowans have been indelibly changed by what has been described as America's mental health crisis. The series will also shine a light on hope and resources for those who are in recovery from mental health or behavioral health challenges. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat, and we hope that this will be somewhat interactive. So we're going to start by chatting a question that you might have for today, or if you'd like to share why you chose to join the panel today, we'd love to have you put that into the chat just to kind of get us going. And while you're doing that, I want to thank the entire DSM team who works tirelessly to create and execute this series and the magazine. And I'm pleased to be able to introduce Christine Riccelli, who is our editor-in-chief of DSM Magazine, and she's going to say a few words and show us the new magazine. So welcome, Christine.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us, to our panelists and all participants. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this year's Lifting the Veil publication, which is now published. The cover you saw a sneak of just a second ago, but it's a beautiful artwork by local parent and artist Emily Lawson, who found inspiration for her blossoming art career working with her neurodivergent daughter, Izzy. Inside then, we have a story on this young family whose members, both kids and adults, find hands-on therapy in their garage art studio for anxiety, autism, and other mental health conditions. Another article also highlights the healing power of art. In this one, you'll learn about how pottery students at Des Moines Public Schools Central Academy explored their feelings about COVID-19 through a ceramics project created by local artist Jamie Milne. You'll also discover a very uplifting story that focuses on two phenomenally resilient and inspiring young people who shared their stories, one of addiction and one of gender transition, and how they found help and healing through treatment. It's about their own road to recovery. Overall, you'll find that this year's edition focuses on youths and, again, their road to recovery. This is a group that we all know has experienced a significant increase in mental health conditions since the pandemics. Stories delve into programs that work to help kids in school and beyond, success stories, and tips and resources that prove treatment works and the road to recovery and renewal is indeed possible.
Well, thank you, Christine. I have read this magazine and seen it in the layout, and the stories are unbelievably beautiful and inspiring. Christine and team have done a wonderful job, but I really, really encourage you to take a look at it and to share it with your friends. You can get a copy by going to the link here or you can order a hard copy by calling us at 515-288-4580. So Christine, I appreciate you being on, and I also want to thank our sponsors who make this program possible. First, a big thanks to Clive Behavioral Health, who is our presenting sponsor. Thank you to our supporting sponsors, Delta Dental, Easter Seals, Employee and Family Resources, IMT Insurance, and the University of Iowa Healthcare. And then finally, to our sustaining sponsors, Capital Crossroads, Mid-Iowa Health Foundation, NCMIC, and Optime Behavioral Health Services. Thanks to all of them, this would not be possible without you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenting sponsor, Jason Bridey, who is the Director of Business Development from Clive Behavioral Health, is with us and will say a few words. Welcome, Jason.
Welcome, and thank you, Susanna, and thank you, everyone. And thanks for the opportunity to just spend a quick moment to tell you a little bit about Clive Behavioral Health. Clive Behavioral Health, of course, on the front end here, I want to make sure that we all know, or you all know rather, that we're so proud to be a presenting sponsor of the Lifting the Veil Road to Recovery series. At Clive Behavioral Health, I also want you to know that we provide both inpatient and outpatient behavioral health treatment options. As an inpatient behavioral health hospital in Clive, Iowa, we are relatively new. And so I really always appreciate the opportunity just to share the services that we provide. We are a 100-bed licensed facility. We accept referrals and walk-in patients, and we offer no-cost assessments 24/7. We also accept all insurances. Also, just for folks who are interested in understanding the inpatient programming, we treat pediatric patients age 5 to 17. And then we also treat adults from 18 years on up to 99, if you will. For adolescents not needing that 24-hour inpatient services programming, Clive Behavioral Health, we do offer an inpatient, an intensive outpatient program, or what's referred to as an IOP, for adolescents aged 13 to 17 who struggle with mental health challenges. We offer those in 3-hour morning options or a 3-hour afternoon option. And last but not least, and this somewhat ties in with some of the recovery conversation that will happen in this presentation, we have just launched this week our First Step Recovery Center for patients struggling with both chemical dependency and emotional issues or recurring disorders. For this program, we offer same-day appointments for assessment and evaluation. So if you or someone you know is in a mental health crisis, our doors are always open 24/7. We can also be reached anytime at 844-680-0504, where you will get to speak with one of our admissions clinicians. We can also connect you with our outpatient programs if you're wanting more information. So with that, I will hand it back to our co-hosts, and thanks again for the opportunity.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jason. We're very pleased that you could be with us today. And thank you so much to Clive Behavioral Health for all that you do. So as Jason said, today we're going to be focusing on adults in recovery. And we have a number of mental health experts here with us, and Andrew is going to be asking them questions as well as contributing some comments of his own. We're going to be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions or comments, please do type them in and we'll see if we can integrate them along the way. And again, I invite you right now, if you would like to chat just sort of why you're here, we would love to see that. Or if you want to chat what you'd love for the panel to cover. Before we introduce our experts, though, I told you I was going to introduce Andrew in a little bit more depth. So I think you know Andrew Allen is the CEO of YSS. They are a leading Iowa nonprofit that serves youth through counseling, treatment, housing, and shelter, prevention programs, life skills, and other services. Andrew was selected to be the president and CEO in 2015. He has a long history with the program, having been through YSS programs himself as a youth. He is now recognized as a leader nationally in youth mental health in addiction and substance abuse overall in Iowa and nationwide. So thank you, Andrew. We're really pleased that you could be here co-moderating once again.
Yeah, thanks again, Susanna. Just hats off to you and your whole team who have pulled this together, who've really shown a bright light on an issue that has been emerging over the past decade and is here and needs to be talked about. So I'm delighted to be here co-hosting with you, and I think we're ready to get started with our panel. One note, you might have seen on some of the promotions that Alex Pediris was going to be with us today, but he had a last minute conflict, so he's unable to join. But I am very excited to introduce today's expert guests. First, we'll start with a colleague and a peer. We're joined by Cynthia Steidel Bishop, CEO at Irely Ball Community Mental Health. Cynthia's been with Irely Ball since 1993 when she was hired as a therapist following graduate school at the University of Iowa. She was named COO, Chief Operating Officer, and then in 2014 named Chief Executive Officer. Cynthia, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. And thank you to the Business Record for putting on Lifting the Veil and continuing to really bring mental health to the forefront. So I'm so glad to be here. Thanks.
Glad to have you. Our next expert is Juan Pablo Padilla, a licensed mental health counselor of Mind and Spirit Counseling Center, formerly known as Des Moines Pastoral Counseling Center. Juan Pablo is a bicultural and bilingual licensed mental health counselor. He's got a bachelor's degree in theology and a master's in Spanish, as well as counseling. He works primarily with adults, couples, families to resolve their relationships, trauma history, depression, anxiety, and life transitions. Greeting, Juan Pablo.
Yeah, hi, how are you? Nice to be with you and be part of Lifting the Veil. It's the first time I'm participating, and I'm very excited to be part of this great effort.
Well, we're glad to have you. We've got a great group of experts. We just want to thank everyone else for joining us. And let's just get started with the panel questions. Let's start with a question for both of you. Maybe you could set the stage by sharing a little bit of information or data as it relates to the severity around increases in mental health, behavioral health problems in adults, especially what you're seeing here in Iowa. And maybe we could also just dig into, some of the factors that you think are influencing the increase. Cynthia, do you want to start?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I've got a lot of data. There's a lot of data out there about mental health, and I'm going to focus specifically on Iowa to kind of just bring it home to really what we're dealing with here, right here in Iowa. Iowa ranks among the worst states in the nation for mental health treatment. We're 47th in psychiatrists, 44th in mental health workforce availability, and 51st in the ratio of state psychiatric beds to residents. 473,000 adults in Iowa have a mental health condition. 128,000 adults have a serious mental illness. In Iowa, 490 lives were lost to suicide, and 129,000 adults have had thoughts of suicide in the last year. We definitely have an issue of mental health in Iowa. So I'm glad that we're able to talk about that today. What are the factors? It's, when you think about why is mental health increasing? Why are there more people seeking treatment than they have before? I don't think there's one specific answer to that. I think there's a lot of different factors. I think an easy one that we can just talk about, that we all can say, oh, it must be COVID. And COVID certainly affected all of us. And I don't think any of us really know to what extent COVID has affected our mental health. But I read a statistic here that more than half of Americans report that COVID-19 has had a negative impact on their mental health. So clearly, COVID has affected people's mental health. Last year in 2021, our numbers at Irely Ball just shot up. And I don't think that we're alone in that. I think there was a reason that people really sought out treatment after 2020. Other factors could possibly be social media. Social media has taken a lot of that personal interaction that we generally have with people, and now people are online a lot more. And that also happened with COVID too. So there's a lot more loneliness out there than I think there used to be. And then also with social media, with TikTok and Instagram and all that, there's a lot more focus on how people look physically. And I think especially with girls, that has really contributed to more anxiety and more depression. In fact, 37,000 Iowa girls and women from there are 37,000 girls and women from age 12 to 17 that experience more depression. So I don't think that we can dismiss what social media has done to all of us, including our girls. There's a lot more cyberbullying for people who are online more. And then the last point I want to make is, this is, I think, a positive thing to end on a positive note when it comes to factors, is that I think there are more people that are willing to seek treatment. I think there are, like lifting the veil. I mean, there's
Right.
more people talking about mental health, and it's okay to go out and find a therapist, or maybe just go out and get an assessment. I think that it's becoming more acceptable to do that than what it used to be. I think there's still stigma out there, but there's less stigma. We're really working on that in our profession, but I think there's less than what there used to be, and more people are seeking treatment than what they had before.
Yeah, that's great background, Cynthia. Juan Pablo, what are you seeing in your practice and as you work in the field?
Yeah, definitely. I will agree with what Cynthia is sharing today. And also I was checking with NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. They are reporting one of the articles about Iowa, making Iowa #1 in mental health. That's the name of the article. And they will mention that the mental health care system here in Iowa is definitely not the greatest. And, definitely we need to work a lot on that. But what struck me, is that they are mentioning that Iowa is #1 in ranking as a state with a recent survey from Career Bliss that named Des Moines the unhappiest city for workers.
Wow.
So what that brings is, a big concern why people will be experiencing depression, anxiety, among other causes of that, but is one of the big ones, that we haven't maybe reflect on, because obviously we will talk about, how COVID had impacted us,
Right.
And other factors. We have a big rural community here in Iowa, but just thinking about, how the work culture are in a lot of places is not really, helping people. So I just have seen clients that will come feeling super unhappy about how they are treated by employers, by the boss, and the culture that they would have. Definitely I can see that in not just white people, but also Hispanics and Blacks and other communities that we have.
Yeah, I think the message is people are struggling in a lot of ways. I really, to Cynthia's point, appreciate the work that's been done around stigma. I just don't think without something like the pandemic, you could have moved things forward as quickly as it did over the past few years. Having said that, it's contributed to the problem a little bit because it's more socially acceptable to seek therapy and counseling, yet you heard the statistics about the reduction in, or the the workforce shortages that Iowa has. So the demand is actually creating more issues as it relates to workforce, because we just don't have enough providers. So here's a plug for everybody out there that cares about this space. It's never too late to pursue a master's degree in social work or counseling and get into the field, because the need is really great. We do talk a lot about the lack of resources. Cynthia mentioned the lack of beds, treatment centers and hospitals. You both are in the field, you're working in this space, you both offer services. Can you talk a little bit about some of the services that are available? Juan Pablo, would you like to start?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we are not able to provide services for everybody that will come and ask for what they need. Like our waiting list will be over 100 people, adults, teenagers, etc. And sometimes they need to wait 2 or 3 months to be seen. And we're trying the best we can, but we don't have enough therapists, and we are over 30 people, therapists working here,
Yeah.
So definitely it's a big concern. Our waiting list for assessments are sometimes ridiculous, like 8 months or something like that. So definitely we are very concerned. We would like to have hire more psychologists offering assessments to people, but so we need to refer them to our places, because there is no way we can help them, but we are trying to do the best we can, offering just treatment for people with anxiety, depression.
You bet.
They are facing just different life transitions. They're divorcing, or they're moving, or things like that. Or people with just mental illnesses.
Yep.
Etc.
Cynthia, you represent Irely Ball, a community mental health center, really taking care of, the fabric of the community from a mental health standpoint. You came alongside a big health system a few years ago. Can you talk a little bit about some of the work that you're doing and the resources that that are available?
Sure. As both Juan Pablo and Andrew talked about, yep, there is a shortage of therapists. We used to always talk about there's a shortage of psychiatrists, and we still have, there's still a need for medical professionals in mental health, but there's really a need for therapists. And I think anybody who's seeking treatment has noticed that. But I also, so anybody in the field, we're struggling with that. We're all trying to hire just from this tiny little pool of therapists. But there's also some resources that are available to us. And if people need immediate access, I saw someone from the Broadlawn Psych Urgent Care is on this call, and that's fantastic, because there are 2 in the Des Moines area, there are 2 psych behavioral health urgent cares, and that people can walk in and get an immediate assessment, and they can see a med provider, they can see a therapist, they can see case managers who offer support services. So those are fairly new in the whole continuum of behavioral health services. And so if people need that immediate help, they can walk in and get that every day. So that's a wonderful place to start. Also, there are other crisis services that are available. That's a requirement throughout every region in the state. So you can call 988. That's a new number. That's national. It's a 988. It's a national number. Anybody can call it, and they can get referred to a crisis service. And these mobile crisis teams will come out to people's homes, do an assessment, get them referred to wherever they need to go. They can maybe get them into a hospital immediately if that's the case, or they can get them referred to appropriate services. So it's not all doom and gloom. There are resources that are available to you when you need them immediately. All community mental health centers, it's a requirement that they can walk into a community mental health center and be seen. And also, I have a statistic somewhere that talks about some people who don't have insurance don't think that they can go and get services, and you can. Every communal health center, and everybody has them throughout the state, you can walk into a communal health center and get served regardless of ability to pay. So there are resources available to people. So don't ever let payment or fear of I'm not going to be able to get it anyway, because there are resources out there for people.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a great.
I would like to add something, Andrew, if you
Go
allow
ahead, Juan
me
Pablo.
in this section. The Iowa House, recently approved House File 2456, which could, among the other things, expand mental health services by creating 6 access centers, which would benefit individuals experiencing a mental health crisis, but who don't require hospitalization. It would also call for community-based treatment services, such as assertive community treatment teams, to help people with severe mental illness avoid hospitalization. So this is something that is coming, and it's good to see that there's more hope there.
Yeah, I think about. Go ahead, Susanna.
Yeah, I have a question for both Cynthia and Juan Pablo. So if you have somebody in your life who really is in crisis, and you're hearing all these things about lack of resources, what I'm hearing you say, Cynthia, is you can just present at some of these places and they will steer you in the right direction. How would that work? Let's talk a little bit for our viewers so that they can understand where to go and what the process might be like.
For sure. Well, because I'm in Des Moines, I'm going to speak to Des Moines, and you can walk into Unity Point Psych Urgent Care. It's located by Lutheran Hospital, and then also Broadlawns has a Psych Urgent Care as well. You can walk in, get services. Again, you can see a med provider, you can see a therapist, you can see a support staff, a support services person that can help you maybe with getting Medicaid or housing, or you can walk in and get services. Again, you can call mobile crisis. Then you can get and meet someone to respond to you in your home immediately. There's also I didn't mention this earlier, but a really neat program is called Crisis Stabilization Community Based. And that's another crisis service where if you're called out on a mobile crisis call and that team doesn't think that you really need hospitalization, but could use more intensive services, they can refer to Crisis Stabilization Community Based, and that will get them a therapist, a med provider, and then someone actually going out to their home and talking with them for an intensive services for a week or even longer. So that's a really, really neat program. When it started, I was like, man, do we really need another crisis service? Love that service. And it has great outcomes because people who really need it can get it immediately and get lots of services at one time. Does that help?
Really helpful. Yeah, that's really helpful.
We are. Go ahead, Juan Pablo.
No, just I want to mention that here at the Mind Spirit Counseling Center, we have the philosophy of helping people, that don't have the resources, that will come and will use and scale. We will, even if they can pay anything, that is not a barrier to be seen. And we will offer the same quality of service like anybody else that will be able to pay or will have a great insurance. So it's just our philosophy, and we try to be very faithful to that.
Yeah, I think about two things really. From onset to a mental health condition to first dose of treatment, oftentimes is upwards of 7 years, right? So you've got people who aren't reaching out for help because they've heard the help doesn't exist, or they're worried about a complicated system. And I hear both of you indicating that the resources are available. It's so important to make that first phone call. 988 is an easy number to call. I have called it not just to test it, but I've called it because I had someone in crisis and I was interested in where they would direct them for services. You've got Clive Behavioral Health, a major investment in this community recently. And the state, I think oftentimes I hear lobbyists say, don't ask for money. The state's got money, guys, and it continues to invest in projects that are important based on what citizens are asking for. And so I just continue to encourage everyone on this call and people that are listening to advocate for, more services, more mental health and behavioral health services to support the community. Let's move on and talk a little bit about, what recovery looks like. Susanna mentioned it, and many people know I'm a person in long-term recovery. YSS provided life-saving services to me when I was a kid. I'm an adult today, and so I'm, an adult in recovery. I've surrounded myself with people that, know that and support that, and also feel uniquely positioned to help other people pursue recovery. But why don't we talk a little bit about what it looks like from addiction to anxiety and depression, eating disorders, suicidal ideation. What do you feel like people in recovery should expect? What does it look like? And then how are family members and loved ones incorporated into people's recovery? Cynthia, would you like to start?
Sure. Recovery is different for everyone. It can be something that if people are experiencing anxiety and depression, they might be able to work through their issues with support of family and friends. But other people, they might need more support than that. I mean, it's a continuum of what people can use as support and what they need. So I think that's important to think it's different. It's different for everybody. But I think what's really important to keep in mind is people can recover from mental health issues. People can recover. And I think but again, it looks different. It looks different for everybody. Some people might need medication. And that's, sometimes people are like, I don't want to be on medication forever. You don't have to be on medication forever. Sometimes people, when they experience mental health symptoms, they take medication just to kind of get them over the hump. And that might take 6 months. But they can take medication and then call it good for a while. But some people might have to be on medication for a longer period of time. It's always helpful. The best treatment usually is a combination of both medication and therapy, because a lot of times, and Juan Pablo's shaking his head because he knows this too, is a lot of times people have that medication that's going to help them, work through those symptoms. And that's what's going to help the symptoms. But there's those behavioral issues that a therapist is really going to help people to work through, and how to maybe change behavior and help people have more insight into what the issues are. And that will help them to deal with how their depression and their anxiety. But again, I think we have to just think about, well, this is what my friend did and this is what worked for them. It's different. It's different for everybody.
Yeah, great perspective. Juan Pablo?
Yeah, yes, I want to bring something, from Powell Chemical Dependency Center, when they talk about recovery for people that are using different substances and alcohol. They will go with, some considerations that, in my point of view, are very, very important and very successful when it's about recovery. And one of them is working with the family, right? So it's not just the person with the substance use, but also the family or people that are affected by that, because it's a lot of uncertainty, pain, loss, helplessness, fear, created because of the drug use. So in my experience working with people that have issues with alcohol or drug, I know that at the end, what we need to treat is the cause, which is the trauma, And so one of the approaches that I use a lot with them is EMDR. So I have this experience of one of the people that was treated by a Powell Chemical Dependency Center. They sent this person to me for EMDR. And it was just a great, a successful experience for these people, because she was able to process her trauma. She was a rape, so definitely was a hard one.
I want to ask a question. You talk about getting the family involved, which is very important, but the community in general contributes
Mhm.
in many ways to
Mhm.
stress, substance abuse, et cetera. And Andrew, when we were doing some conversations, you shared some pretty alarming statistics around the rates of substance abuse in Iowa. Can you talk about that? And then like, friends, not just family members, but friends, coworkers, how do we support people by not creating a culture that promotes substance abuse?
Yeah, I think it's prevalent in Iowa more so than we realize. Iowa State University had an article, they were talking about addiction recently, and I hadn't heard about meth a lot. I mean, it still exists. We see it in treatment, but everybody's talking about opiates and, overdoses and fentanyl. Iowa is still #1 in the country for meth. And to be honest, short of Wisconsin, everybody knows Wisconsin's got drinking issues. Iowa is #2 in the country for binge drinking. And you put those together, and we lead the nation in the number of individuals per capita, transition age youth, 18 to 24-year-olds who has substance use disorder. So we're the worst. We're the best or the worst. We're the worst in the country as it relates to some of these issues. I wanted to touch on what you addressed a little bit, Susanna, the idea of community, right? And the communities that we exist. I sure wasn't comfortable sharing early in my professional career that I didn't drink. I was also invited to plenty of social situations where there was drinking. To be honest, I was sober through my collegiate experience, and college is hostile to sobriety. And one of the things that Iowa State has done, and Drake University is engaging in, is the development of a collegiate recovering community. And so I see some recovering community folks on the call today. There's a recovering community in Des Moines that's being established, and a safe place with resources for people who are pursuing recovery. It's a great evolution. It's an important service to have, and generally speaking, when I talk to young people in recovery, I say, hey, if you want to be successful, hang out with successful people. If you want to be sober, hang out with people that are sober or supportive of sobriety. And I think it's important to talk about it and surround ourselves with people that are supportive.
Yeah.
I would encourage employers who are on the line, if you're working at a company, to not promote a culture of drinking or other types of unhealthiness. I mean, it's so easy to say, we're going to give somebody a bottle of wine as a present. That used to happen at a company I worked at for years. That was the gift. Or, let's go get a drink. Or, oh my God, I need to get it. I mean, just the conversations people have around those types of things, tiny differences it can make in the workplace to just talk about wellness and respect people's boundaries. That's far cry from what you guys are dealing with every day, but I think it's an important cultural element.
Well, and let me just highlight what you just said. You've got Susanna DeBaca, president, publisher, is that your title? Business publications. Asking the business community to think twice about the culture that's being created around drinking. I applaud you for saying that, and I hope it spurs conversations.
Mhm. I think the state is also looking at, and nationally, looking at, there is not a lot of substance use treatment facilities. There's not enough. And they're really nationally looking at how we can really bring mental health and substance use together. I mean, the state did that. That's what the state's working on right now, is bringing the Department of Human Services and the Department of Public Health together, because they should be together. We're one person. Your head's connected to your body. So, and they're looking at how we can, organizations can treat the whole person. They're bringing in these in the last few years, they're called Certified Community Behavioral Health Centers, CCBHCs, where that's a requirement, where you can't just treat mental health, and you can't just treat substance use. You have to, if you're going to be a CCBHC, which there are 14 now, I believe, in Iowa, you have to do both. You have to provide substance use treatment and mental health treatment. So slowly, we're getting there.
Appreciate the perspective.
So let's talk a little bit about what people can actually expect in recovery. We've talked about you're in crisis, you present someplace and you need help, and then you launch in. I know there are a lot of individuals, having been around recovery a lot in my life, who think, oh, well, we're here, we get treatment, now it's all okay. But in my experience, it's an ongoing process. So talk a little bit about that experience and what somebody can be thinking about, either an individual or a family member.
You want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I will bring 4 points, for what to expect, for recovery. So if we are talking about somebody that is with addiction, so I will say the first thing that you need to expect is to have a treatment, high quality for alcohol and drug addiction. Number 2 will be teach basic skills needed for recovery. Number 3 will be connect people with best social supports needed to remain sober, what Andrew was saying, And number 4, treat the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. And I would say treat trauma that is behind that, Also, there are some genes, things like that. So that's, something I will bring. And in terms of counselors that are specialized in drug use, will be just check that they are certified alcohol and drug counselors that can provide this service. They can be in different levels, with masters and even doctoral levels. And that's the hope. So the hope is, treat chemical dependency as a illness, And I will say definitely you want to look, like it's something that is treatable, like we can do something about that.
Great perspective.
I think it's also sometimes intimidating. I think we referenced this earlier on today, but I used to be a runner, and the hardest step was the step out the door, right? And that's the way I think it is with mental health. It's people might be, it might take a while for them to finally say, okay, this is it. And I think as family members, or friends, to give those people grace, because they have to, it's got to be on their terms. And that's something I think hard for a loved one too, is to sit with that. And you have to just hang in there with them and continue to encourage them to go out and seek treatment. But we as providers then also, we really have to be ready when that person is ready to make that step, to really engage them and try to work them in as much as we can, because again, it might take a while. And sometimes people, and I used to do therapy a long time ago, people would say, how long is this going to take? Like there's some magic number, and there's not, and I said, sometimes I would say, how long did it take you to get here? Because it might take a while. For some people, it's not going to take a while, and they just might have to work through a few issues, and they get that kind of taken care of, and they don't think they really need it anymore. Some people, it might take longer, and again, there's a whole spectrum of treatment. As somebody was talking earlier, I was like, I should talk about this Restore program. And this is when somebody who is having their first episode of psychosis. So it's the first time that, somebody has experienced psychosis, and that's really frightening. For them, it's frightening for their families. It's a scary experience. There's a program called Restore, and that's funded through the state. And what that program does is it wraps services around for that client. So they have individual treatment, they have a psychiatrist, they have a nurse, they have someone that just works with the family. And because it's so important to get treatment early, that's something else to think about too, is if you can, don't wait too long to get in treatment, because the sooner you can get in, it won't take as long. And with this Restore program, they wrap all these services around people, and they're we call their baseline doesn't go down so quickly, so they can really get better and get better faster. And so that's a really, really neat program. And we've seen such amazing results. It's because people get in quicker, and then they can get all those services, and it doesn't take so long to get better.
That's great.
So-
It's the right service at the right intensity at the right time. And that's what we're all working towards as providers. I hear somebody in the chat mention 12-step programs. I'll tell you, I've been sober a day at a time for more than 26 years. And while I don't feel the urge to drink or use ever, and haven't for, decades, I do still surround myself with sober people. And like I said, feel uniquely useful to share that experience for someone who is new. Susanna talked about, how difficult it is to take that first step. That's the hope that, we are ultimately going to share in this session, is that it's been said, treatment works, recovery is possible. And you just have to take that first step. If you know someone that is struggling, someone that is desperate, it is so important to get them connected with services. Should we talk about some success stories? Should we talk about, Juan Pablo mentioned some, but let's share some success stories that we've seen over the years through this work. Cynthia, would you like to start?
Sure. I think one important thing that I do want to make this, I want to make this point, is how important it is to have a good relationship with your therapist. It's finding that person that you really feel comfortable talking to, because you're going to share stuff with that person, that you're going to trust that person. One really great thing about the therapist is that they're totally objective, and your friends are going to tell you sometimes what you want to hear. And a therapist isn't going to necessarily do that. They might challenge you sometimes, and a therapist can do that because they're objective. But it really helps to have that person that you really feel comfortable with. So I think that's important too, is to find that person. But anyway, that was one more point that I wanted to make. A success story. I love this story. I recently heard about this person that we were serving, and he said that I could share his story. And he was a guy that has been successful in his job for many, many years. He did well, but throughout many years, he was depressed. Mm-hmm. And he would go to work every morning, and come home, take a nap, get up, eat dinner, go back to sleep, and do it all over again. And that was his world for a long time. He was very isolated, though he had a very supportive family. But that was what he did. And he did that again. This was over 20 years, that's how he lived his life. But it continued to get worse. He had a really supportive boss, as well as not just a supportive family, he had a supportive boss, worked with him. But at one point he just thought, you know what, this isn't how I want to live. Mm-hmm. And went to a parking ramp, put his legs over the parking ramp, and thought, this is it. He said before he did that, he had actually in his car made a diagram of how he was going to do that. And then for some reason, he put his legs back, and someone apparently had seen him. Police came, took him to the hospital. That was a really wonderful experience for him in the hospital. They were super supportive. And after that, he realized, this isn't working for me anymore. He quit his job and really then just put himself into, what can I do to get the support that I need? And he continued with therapy, medication. Now he gets support services. And he's now doing really well. He's back to working, and he's living life. He's happy. And I just think, he's still taking medication and doing everything. He's working what he needs to do. But I loved that story, because someone that appeared, he's got a job, he's paying his bill, he's doing everything he needs to do, but still wasn't happy. And that wasn't how he wanted to live. And I just thought, gosh, here's somebody that was able to turn it around and is living a good life right now.
That's a great story. As Susanna said, gives us hope. Juan Pablo, have you got a story you'd like to share?
Yeah, sure. So I have this client that was waiting for, as I said, 2-3 months to be seen. So she finally got to come and be seen by me, and she was very depressed and anxious, and like chronically, you know. And so we were able to start looking at different, experiences, trauma history, and processing those traumas, grief, like she was trying to resuscitate the father of her fiance and couldn't. So, very hard experience for her. She cared about that guy a lot. And also she was a victim of rape, and her boyfriend that later on was the fiance that things got never married, but was just very abusive. And so she really wanted to kill herself, like very suicidal. So definitely, she naturally found a way out by going to the hospital, falling down from her apartment, and some broken bones, things like that. But that experience really got her parents' attention, and she was able to go and went to live with her parents and start therapy. So at this point, definitely she is looking back to her life and seeing that is past, and she can live a very different life. Now she's helping as a assistant teacher. One of the worst behavior, like kids in in the school, and she's been very successful because she was able to connect with that one, you know. So it's amazing to see how people can transform their lives when they heal, and they can do much better. So definitely very happy to see that transformation.
It's another great story. The greatest honor is I get to lead the organization that saved my life. I wear this pin around and people see it and they're like, YSS. And I can tell when they start the conversation that they have been impacted by services. A guy at the shop where I was getting my car worked on just this week picked me up to give me a ride home. He's like, hey, what's going on at YSS? And I'm like, well, you know about YSS? He said, well, I was there when I was a kid. And he went on to share his success story. So I love the alums that have participated in our programs. I'm grateful to each of you for the steadfast support that you're providing the community. Should we go to some more resources, Susanna? Just so much good information has been shared today. We want to list out some of the resources that have been shared by our panelists.
Yep, here's a whole list, and we'll chat this as well, and that will also come in a follow-up. But for as much as we talk about concerns about access, there are, as we saw in the chat, there are wonderful organizations providing care. So jot these down, and I think what we heard, the success stories all involve getting help somewhere. So if you need help or somebody you know does, please take a look at this list. So I want to just start to think about how we close. And so I'm going to give each one of our panelists a minute to think about kind of some parting wisdom to send us off with. And while they do that, I just want to give you a reminder to watch out for our 2023 Lifting the Veil events. Our topic next year is going to be a changing landscape for mental health. And so we'll be talking about mental health in a variety of different places, including the workplace, including our community. So again, stories of resilience and hope. I also invite you, as I did before, to subscribe to our stunning print publications, DSM and IA Magazine, and for our free newsletters, DSM Weekly, Weekend, and Wealth, and our statewide IA newsletter. And if you have story ideas, you met Christine, you can send her story ideas at the email here. And if you're interested in supporting our publication or events, you can contact Emily Schultz. So I'll turn it back to Andrew for some of our parting thoughts here.
Yeah, I think we just go back to our experts on the panel. Would love to give you each just a minute or so to provide a short send off and wrap things up, leave our viewers with some perspective and hope as it relates to the topic of adults on recovery. Juan Pablo, would you like to go first?
Sure. I will say never give up. You always can find a path to healing and growing and make your life worth it, serving others.
Well said, Cynthia.
Sure. First of all, I think just some things for families to think about. If you've got a family member or a close friend that you think is struggling, just make sure that you continue to ask questions and really encourage them to go and get some help. Again, give them grace, give them compassion, and just be there for them. I think another thing is continue to ask them, engage them. You know, sometimes if you want to take them out to dinner or shopping or whatever, and they continue to tell you no, keep asking. Just be there for them, and then give them grace. If they they might have some good days, but they're still going to have some bad days too, but just be there for them. And then I think when we talk about recovery is different. It's different for everybody. And so keep that in mind. And recovery doesn't necessarily mean that you're symptom free. You still might have symptoms, but what's most important is that you have a meaningful life. And I think that if you can, that be your goal. It might not be that, you know, this eternal happiness. Probably not very realistic. But if you can think about this is what it's going to take for me to have a meaningful life, and I think that's going to be your goal. Stick with it, because you can get there, because recovery is possible.
I really appreciate it. You guys have provided great wisdom and expertise. I see it in the comments. People are appreciative. I encourage everyone to continue to pursue resources. And not to ever give up on what might seem like a hopeless case. I think that plenty of people have been desperate and have been, through the trials of mental health and addiction, impacting family and friends in a way that makes them want to distance themselves when at the end of the day, the reality is they need people there by their side. So really grateful to each of you. Thank you so much for joining us and for taking the time. I think we're going to go back to our sponsors. I'm not sure if Susanna's still with us or not, but the supporting sponsors, the sustaining sponsors, and really appreciate what Clive Behavioral Health is doing, sponsoring this series, ensuring that programs like this keep coming and publications keep coming that are raising the level of awareness that we need to continue to address the behavioral health needs of this state. So I do have a script. I've got Susanna's line here. Just want to thank you all are you still with us? No, okay. So thank you all for tuning in, for caring about mental health, and for working to attend today. And on behalf of Lifting the Veil, I want to thank our panelists. Susanna, thanks for your vision. Cynthia, Juan Pablo, grateful to you both. Thanks to the staff that put this on. And we hope to see you at the next Lifting the Veil program in 2023. Thanks everyone for joining us.